Okay, first of all, about myself. My name is Karan Kapoor, and I am a freelance designer. I call myself a designer because I work in various fields, including graphic design and also UI and UX design. All right. So the first two sessions that I took were of UI UX design, and this session that I am taking is of graphic design. Because I started off as a graphic designer, and I think that has also affected the other areas of design that I do. So I'll be sharing some tips and I'll be telling you about the tools in Figma. And yeah, so let's get started. So first of all, I'll be turning off my video now so that I can instruct you from my computer screen. All right. Okay. So first of all, uh, open a browser window and type in figma.com. And I have also enabled the shortcuts to be seen on the screen so that you can see what I am pressing on the right hand side of the screen over here. All right. So if you have any questions, just stop me right there and I'll answer your questions. Okay. So let's log in first. Since I am an existing user, I will log in. And if you are a first time user, you will have to create an account or click on sign up over here. All right. So since I'm already a user, let's click on this. So now I'm logged in. Now this is the home screen. All right. So if you want to access the features of the screen, then this would be the plus icon would be to create a new file. This would be to import files from other softwares like Adobe XD and Sketch. And here is where you will find your plugins and search, right? And notifications. If someone shares a document with you, you'll see it here who has shared it with you. All right. And before I start, I would like to showcase this, right? So in the previous two sessions that we did, this is what was made by Vasudha, who's on the video currently. All right. So these are really simple shapes combinations that she did to kind of make these easy cartoons. All right. So I'll be telling you some of these features. All right. So how you can start and reach this point or whatever point you want to reach. All right. So let's start with the slides. All right. Okay. First of all, welcome to the graphic design session. I'll be walking you through a list of topics that I mentioned. Right. So the first topic that I'm going to start with is guides and grids. But before that, if you are wondering what this is called a frame in Figma. So if you want to create a frame, you simply click on the A button, all right, or you can access it from here, all right, F or A, both would work. And if you click on this, the templates on the right side will open, bit depending on what you want to design for, all right. So I will choose an Instagram post which is of the size 1080 by 1080, right? Like I have chosen here, all right? And the first thing I would like to introduce today is guides and grids. So guides and grids are lines or margins that you use in other documents such as creating a resume or creating a doc file. So these are the boundaries of a document. So I'll quickly show you how to create them. Once you have created a frame, also, one more thing, it would be great if you follow along so that you can clarify your doubts right here. All right. So once you have created a frame, you click on the frame name, or it can also be seen on the left hand side. This is a panel. All right. These two are the panels. Okay. So in this panel, you will see layers and assets. I will come to assets later. It is not very important for now. So the first thing that you will see is pages. So pages are just like the pages in a notebook. You can create anything on them, and I have created different pages for different sessions. So the first session that I did, this is a page for that. All right. The second session that I did, this is a page for that. the third session, I have created a separate page so that everything is separated but also in the same document. All right. And you can also create multiple new pages depending on how you want to organize your work. So the one of the basic things or the one of the basic um, ways to do it is you put your final things in this page and create a experiment page experiment page where you can keep kind of your experiments or things that you don't currently need. Okay. And if you want to send anything to a different page, simply click on that item, right click and move to page. All right. So that your final and your experimental tasks are kept separately. All right. And now for people who are new, I would quickly introduce guides and grids. Okay, so you can either click on the frame here or the frame here. So everything that you see here would be reflected here. All right, and its properties would be on the right hand side. So let's start with guides and grids. Okay, so there's a really simple way to create a guide or a grid. You click on the frame, you go on the right hand side, you click on this layout grid and click on the plus icon. All right, so these, if you can see that there are these squares on your screen. Okay, so if I click on this icon, it shows how much spacing is between each of these squares. All right, and I can also alter the color of the guides depending on what background of the document I'm using. Okay, so these grids are of multiple types. This is a square grid. Okay, with this size of the dimensions of the square. So each square is 10 by 10 pixels. All right, and next would be columns. So columns are usually used in UI design. Okay, or when you want a document, a Word document basically, and you want it to have margins. Okay, so you click on the frame, you go to the layout there, click on this icon, and this shows how many columns you want. Okay, so let me change it to 8 columns. All right. So now that I have 8 columns, these are evenly spaced. Okay, so I can choose a type. So if I have chosen stretch, it would start from the center and stretch outwards. And if I had chosen, oh sorry, it would start from the left hand side and stretch until the right hand side. Okay, and if I had chosen the center, it would constrict itself to the center. Okay, and it would give itself a width like so. Like here it is 10. I can give it a width of 400, but the recommended type is stretch. Okay, so that it fills your entire document or your frame. All right, let me just zoom in so you can see the windows better. Just a second. Okay, so now another thing about these grids is that you can give it a margin. Okay, so if I type in 100, I would get a 100 margin from either of the sides. All right. And this can act as the margin that you use in Word documents, and you can also create PDFs and other file types from there. So now if I go here and this property that I see gutter, this is the gap between each of the columns. So the columns width is adjusted according to the gutter and the margin that you give it. All right. So while working with grids and guides, you must go to the columns type and select the stretch type. And another type of grid is rows. All right. So if you want horizontal spacing, so we want horizontal spacing, so the rows feature would come in handy for that. All right. Now moving on to one of the basics of Figma or any other design software. So layers or groups. All right, layers and groups. So these are one of the basics of any design software that you will use. So a layer is any object that you pick from here. So this is our tool window, and if you click on this square above, this is to select the shapes. All right, if you click on this and you click on rectangle, you can draw out a rectangle here. Okay, and if you hold down shift, you'll be able to create a square. So everything that we create inside a frame would be a layer, all right, and that would be reflected there. If I click on this frame, all the layers inside it would be reflected here, all right. So this, for example, is a rectangle which is reflected as a layer on the left hand side, okay, and this is a circle which is also reflected on the left hand side as ellipse, okay. So you can also rename these. You can also rename your frame. All you have to do is select it, click on Control and R, and it would open the edit text option. Okay. So for example, this uh, the circle is green color, so I'll name it gray circle. So it is easier for me to come back and see what shape has what name, and it also means that uh, you create an organized flow so that when you come back to it later, you are able to identify what was where. Okay, so these are all shapes, all right, and all of these can be accessed from where. So the shapes, to access the shapes, there's a very simple way. So R is for rectangle, all right, O is for an oval, and L is for a line. So if I click on L, it would open up the line creation option. Okay, so I can create a line in any direction. If I hold down shift, it would increase in a straight direction. All right. Okay, so moving on. So, and you can also insert text here. So if you click T for text, or you click on this T icon here, and you click on your frame, or you drag a selection. So this would be a box for your text, all right, and you can type in any text here, all right. So as long as you have dragged and created a selection, it would not exceed this selection. If you want to exceed the text in the selection, you can just stretch it outwards, all right. So, and if you simply click on T and click on your frame, then you can start typing, and as soon as you click on enter, it moves on to the next line, all right. So these are some basic things about text. So for example, I have typed this text here, it would be reflected as a text layer. So T is for text layer on the left hand side, all right. I'm quickly going to delete it, and now coming on to groups. Okay, so a group is a combination or a collection of layers. Okay, so if I click on this rectangle layer here, and if I press shift and click on this circle layer here, all right, so these two are selected simultaneously, and this small icon that you see in between, this is to swap their positions, all right. So if I click on this, their positions can be swapped, all right. So now clicking on it again and shift clicking on the circle, and now if I press Control and G, it would automatically create a group. Just a second, it would create a group. So the group's name is group 62. If I want to remember what shapes are in this group, I can rename this group by pressing Control and R. So I'm renaming this rectangle and circle, all right. And you can also create multiple groups inside a group. So if I click on this, so they would move simultaneously. I would not have to move them separately now that they're in a group. So this is one advantage of a group, all right. So now that I have this group, I can also include this triangle inside another group. Okay, so I shift click on this group, and I click on this triangle, and I click on Control C again. So this creates a group of these two and a group of a triangle. And if there is a group and you want to click on an item independently, you can what you can do is Control or Command click on that specific object. Okay, so it would specifically be selected on the left hand side. As you can see, it is highlighted on the left hand side. The gray circle is selected, which is inside this group, which is further inside this group with this triangle. All right. So this is a quick tip for selecting your layers inside a group. Okay. And similarly for a text layer, you can also create you can also combine text, shape, or text and text for a group. All right. So moving on, one of the most important properties of shape is that it has corners. So every time you click on a shape, these corners, I have shown this for demonstration. These square corners that you see, these square shapes that you see, these are called corners, all right? And you can drag them inside. So if you can see that I have this square, and when I reduce its size, it doesn't reduce very symmetrically. And if I stretch it downwards, it doesn't do justice to the original size, all right? So what I can do is I click on this shape or this group. So I have created this group. In this group, this is a square, this is a square, this is another square, this is another square, and this is another square. Okay. So one thing that you would notice, there's a hierarchy, and based on that hierarchy, you will see the objects are on top or on the bottom. Okay. So if I click on the first square, and if I click on the second square, so these are above this blue square. Okay. So this is a hierarchy in layers. So if I drag it and move it to the top, I wouldn't be able to see the parts of the square that are hidden by this corner. Okay. So this is a hierarchy of layers. So if you want to ungroup this, I'll show you a quick trick. So if you want to ungroup this, you simply click on Control, Shift, and G. So all the elements inside, all the shapes and text inside comes outside. Okay. So now if I want to again move this to the back of these four squares, I can what I can do is that I can simply click on the shortcut Control or Command and the left hand bracket, left hand square bracket. Okay. So now that you can see, it is already behind this square. So this square is named rectangle 11. All right. And if I move it further down by clicking on left bracket and Command key, all right. So this is a hierarchy that is set up in layers. Okay. So if you ever feel that the shape isn't showing up on top, you can simply go on the left hand side and drag it to the top, or use the shortcut Control and right hand side square bracket. All right. So this is a very quick tip for how to manage your layers. And coming on to points. Okay. So if you create a shape, for example, I create a shape. Oh, sorry. I have created a shape. Okay. So when I click on it, I see these are corners. All right. And if I double click on it, these are points. Okay. So what is the difference between point and corner? That you can only adjust the size of the shape from the corners, and if you want to adjust the overall shape, I can do it in such a way. I simply double click on the layer. All right. I simply double click on the shape. It reveals these round points, and if I click on any of these points, and this arrow that you see, it can be accessed by clicking on the V button or the move tool. All right. So if I click on this and if I drag it inside, it would change the shape of the layer. Okay. So this is a very quick way to change the shape of the layers. All right. And the next thing would be handles. So these are some of the very important properties of shapes. All right. So if I double click on it to reveal the points, and I press the command or the control key and then click on any of these points, it would reveal these handles. Okay. So what these handles do is they help us create a curve. Okay. So if I select any of the handles and press the shift key, so it would move in very perfect directions. So if I'm holding the shift key right now, it is moving in the straight direction. If I hold it and move my arrow upwards, it is moving at an angle of 45 degrees. And if I further move it to the right hand side, it is moving at an angle of 90 degrees. And if you individually want to adjust these handles, what you have to do is hold the Alt key, select one of these handles, and adjust it to create a curve. I will tell you more about these when we move on to the pen tool. All right. So these are some of the basics of shapes. And if you want to create any kind of shape, you can do this by creating a simple shape, which can be accessed by the shortcut R or the shortcut O for the rectangle and oval. respectively. All right. So if you have any questions, then you can ask now. Okay. Moving on. You can also leave your questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and then ask questions.
Um, so when you were talking about the four rectangles on
Yeah.
the, uh, so how did you make the rectangles? Can you explain that one more time?
What did I do?
The the four rectangles on top. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
These. Okay. So it is very simple. So if I click on R and I create a rectangle first, right? Now I have to create four small squares. So I click on R again and drag out a square by clicking the Shift key. So it has the same width and height. Okay. So now that I have created this, I will give it a fill of white color. A fill is a color of a shape, and the stroke is the boundary of a shape. Okay. Now what I did was I selected stroke and selected the outside option, which means that the size or the width of stroke would be added to the size of the rectangle. So that if the size of the square is 16 here, and if I give it a stroke of say 2, so now the whole dimensions of this square would be 18 by 18 instead of 16 by 16 after adding two pixels of stroke. All right. And yeah, if you want to change the color of this rectangle, you can simply go on to the right hand side, click on this color and pick any color from here. All right. So this is how you adjust the color. And if you want to give it an outline, you can what you can do is click on the stroke, click on the plus icon, and you simply add a stroke here. So you can drag your mouse on top of it or enter a number manually to give it a stroke. So for now, I've given it an inside stroke, and if I give it an outside stroke now, it would create a stroke outside of this rectangle. And one more thing about strokes is that if you click on this options icon here in the stroke column, you come over here. Alright, so these are some of the properties. If you click on this, it would round from the inside. Wait a second. If you click on this join and click on any of these, it would reflect what kind of a join you want in the stroke. Alright. So for now, I have clicked on the round join. Okay. So this is a miter join, which is the default join. Alright. And if you want to create a dashed line, you can simply enter how much pixels of dash you want and how many pixels of gaps you want. All right. So it would create a simple and easily uh, dashed line. All right. So it moves with your rectangle. It is attached to your rectangle. All right. So this is how these shapes were made. Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay. Now moving on. I would like to talk about combination of shapes. Just a second. So if you want to move uh, to different frames, all you have to do is hold down the space bar and drag with your mouse. Okay, like I'm dragging. So this is the hand tool, which can be accessed from the shortcut H. Okay, so now if I want, and now, if I want to go back to the move tool, which can be accessed by the shortcut B. And if you want to zoom in on an artboard or a frame, you can hold down the control key and scroll with your mouse. Okay, so now moving on to combination of shapes. So you might have seen that these are some of the icons on the uh, Play Store or the App Store of Apple, and there are similar icons on Android Play Store as well. So if you want to create one such icon, what would your steps be? You would first sketch it out on paper and then try to trace it, right? But every shape that you see can be broken down into very basic shapes. So I'll tell you how to break down this into very basic shapes like I have done here. And this is a shape that I've drawn. Okay. So first of all, let's identify what kind of shapes can fit in here. So this looks like a circle to me. All right. This one looks like a circle as well. This one looks like a circle as well. And but this doesn't have a corner or rounded bottom. So what do we do about this? So this looks like a rectangle that is inside the combination of three circles. So let's get started with this. So let's click on the O button and drag out a circle here. Holding down the shift key, let's draw a circle here. Okay. And now if you want to duplicate this, you can simply click on command control C and control V. Okay. So it creates a layer above the original layer. Okay. So this ellipse 8 is above this ellipse 7. So I drag it out on the left hand side, and if I click on the key K and drag it inside, it would mean that I am increasing or decreasing it proportionally. You can also access it from here. It is called the scale tool. So it increases or decreases the size of your selection proportionally. So this is my second circle. I am dragging it out. Okay. Now if you want to create a third circle, another way to duplicate your layer is to click on that layer, hold down the Alt key or the Option key, and then drag it out from there. Now we have three circles. Let's place it here. Let's increase its size. Okay. Now the shape, this place looks empty. So now what I will do is click on the R button, drag out a rectangle here, right? Drag out a rectangle, and I will see that it aligns with the circles that I just drawn. Okay. So now if I have to combine all these shapes, uh, since these are separate shapes currently, I can adjust their fills separately. Okay. But I don't want this. Okay. So what I do is click on this layer, shift click on the other layer, shift click on the other layer, and the last layer. Okay. And I go to this option, the two squares on the top. Okay. I click on the drop down and I click on union selection. Now what union selection does is it places all these shapes inside a union which contains all these shapes which can be edited later. So if I go on the left hand side, I see this union layer name. Okay. And it contains all these layers. So it is a special group which contains all the shapes that you have just combined. All right. So I have combined these. Now let's move the selection down. And now if I want to give it these colors, so if you can see that the color on the top is lighter than the color on the bottom. This is called a gradient. A gradient is basically the change in color according to length, or the changing uh, according to the changing length or the size. Okay. So I click on this, and if I give it a fill, and if you want to pick the fill of this cloud, you simply click on this selection, hold down the I button, and you look for the color there, and you simply click on the color. You simply click with the mouse on the color that you want to replicate. So this is a quick tip to duplicate color. But since it has a gradient, not a fill, so I go on to this panel, click on this, click on solid, and then click on linear. All right. So it has created two colors, one at the top and one at the bottom. Okay. So now if I select this and I have to select the color at the top, I simply click on this eyedropper tool and look for the color that I want to replicate. So I am replicating this color. So this is the color at the start. And if I click on this is the color at the bottom. I want to replicate this color. So if you can see here, this is the opacity of the color. So it changes its color, and it also reduces in opacity. Opacity um, is how much you can see behind a color. So if you can see, you can fully see the background of the frame. So if you want to adjust this, simply click on this, go here, select the second color, and increase the opacity to 100%. Okay, so now we have created a cloud with the same shape and with the same gradient. Okay, and now if I want to create the background, all I do is click on the R button, drag out a square by clicking the shift key, move it down the layers panel. So as you can see, this union of clouds is below this rectangle. So all I do is drag it upwards, okay, so that it is up above. Okay, so if you move it inside this rectangle, you will see that these guiding lines appear. So this guiding line at the center shows that the horizontal centers of these two are aligned. Okay, and if you see a vertical line, it means that the vertical centers of these two are aligned. Okay, so if I click on this rectangle again, so as you can see, it has rounded corners which can be adjusted from the right hand side here. I simply add or click 8 as a corner radius. It looks like it's low, so I add a corner radius of 20. All right, and now that it has a white color, I go to fill, choose the white color, and as you can see that it doesn't have a uniform white color, so I'll add a gradient again, go to linear. The first color is white, the second color I will adjust the opacity and just select a color that is a bit off white. Okay, so this is how I have created this. Let's click on this and expand it by clicking the shift key and expanding it outwards. And you can also see that it has a shadow, which can be done by clicking on this rectangle, going to effects, clicking on the plus icon. So now the shadow is blurry. So what you can do is click on this sun icon and you can adjust, change the blur to 0. So it has a solid shadow now. And if you want to adjust how much the shadow drops from under, you can adjust the Y of it. And if you want the shadow to be on either left or the right hand side, you can just simply adjust the Y coordinates of the shadow. Okay, so this is a very quick uh, tutorial of how you can combine shapes and apply gradients to your created shapes. Okay, so if I duplicate this union, right, and I go to this drop down and I click on subtract selection. Okay, so these are some of the combinations of the shapes that you can do. So if I click on exclude, the common parts of all the shapes are deleted from the combination. Alright, and if I click on intersect, so as all of the parts of the shapes are intersecting in some way or the other, the intersect is 0. Alright, so this is how you can combine shapes and add gradients to your shapes. And if you can try out, then this Twitter icon is also a combination of multiple circles. So if you are into logo designing, you can try out keeping circles there. So these are all combination of circles, small and big. Okay. Yeah. So this is how you add shape combinations and gradients. Okay. So do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. So Sahil has asked that how can you explain unions? Okay, Sahil, I'll explain again. So I create a square by clicking on the R button and dragging out a selection. And now I create a circle by clicking on O and dragging out another circle, a circle. All right. So these two are different shapes, and these can be adjusted separately. I can adjust its color separately. I can adjust this color separately. But what if I want to adjust the color of both together? Okay, so if you see this heart icon, it can be very simply created. So what you can do is create a square by clicking on R, dragging out a square by holding on shift key, this much. Okay, and now what you can do is create two circles, which are the whose diameter is the height of this square. If I drag it out, okay, it would show me that I have placed it uh, at the right right width or the height. Okay, and you can also see the width and height of a shape from the right hand side. So it is 93 and 93, and now I create a circle of 93 and height 93. Now I duplicate this circle by clicking the Alt key and dragging it outside. Okay, so now I align this side to the center of this circle. Okay, and now if I select this, I will align this side with the center of this circle. Now I can adjust the colors of these separately. Okay, but what I want is that I want to adjust the color of these three together, or I want to create a complex shape that cannot be created just by a single shape. Okay, so I click on this circle, click on this circle, and click on this square, and go up to this option and click on union selection, the so that the heart that I have created, I can adjust the color of this together with all the shapes combined. So this is how unions work. Okay, Sahil, you're welcome. And if I go back, I click on the undo key, and now if you see that I can also create an exclude selection. Exclude is the common parts are excluded to create this kind of a shape. Okay, so this was about shapes and gradients. Now moving on to the pen. So the pen tool is one of the most important tools in all of graphic design, and if you learn pen in any of the softwares, you can use it in any of the other software. Okay? So all you have to do is click on P, which means pen tool, and so like I explained here, a pen tool works as points. Okay, so each of these shapes are also created with the pen tool, but these are ready-made shapes so that you don't have to create them. And if you want to create a custom shape like so, I will show you how to create it. And if you want to lock a layer so that it doesn't get disturbed while you're working on top of it, all you have to do is click on Control, Shift, and L. L for lock. It locks the layer, and you can see the lock on the left hand side. Okay. So now I click on the P icon or P button, which uh, opens up the pen tool, and you can see there's a point attached to it. So this is a starting point. If I click on click anywhere on the frame, and if I drag it out without clicking, I can adjust the direction I'm going into. And if I hold down the shift key, it would only move in regular directions like 45 and 90-degree angles. Okay. So now I click on shift and dragging it outside until the end of the straight line. Now, while holding down the shift key, I click here, so it adds another point here. All right. And now to create this curve, it is a complex curve, so we'll have to create 2 points. So I click here, create 1 point, click here, create another point, and I click on the top, create another point, click on this point and create another point, click here to create another point. And when you come back to the starting point, it shows you a circle attached to the pen icon. So it means that the shape is completed. You can only color inside these points if the shape is completed. You cannot otherwise do that. Okay, so now I'm completing this shape. So now uh, you'll say that it doesn't look like the cloud. Okay, so what we can do is simply click on Control or Command and click on any one of the points to reveal handles. Okay, so these are my handles. Okay, so if I want to individually adjust any of these handles, I click on the Option or the Alt key and hold down the Shift key to create a straight line. And if I want to create this curve, I hold down the Alt key and drag it outside to match the shape of this curve. Okay, and now control clicking on this point, it reveals its handles. So I alt click on this handle, push it inwards, and push this handle outwards. Same, clicking control key, pushing it outwards, and pushing this outwards as well. And if you don't want to, if you want to adjust both the handles together, what you can do is hold any of the handles with control or the command key and then move them. Okay, so now control clicking on this, dragging it inwards, dragging this outwards, control clicking, dragging outwards, and dragging outwards as well, and control clicking on this, dragging this outwards, dragging this inwards. So this is a very rough outline. Okay, so if I bring it here, it looks somewhat similar, but not as good as when we did it with combination of shapes. Okay, so now I click on it. I have the same properties. I click on fill. I can give it a color on the inside and a boundary on the outside. So this is the boundary that you can adjust where you want to put the boundary. Currently, I have clicked on outside. Okay, so this is how you quickly create a shape with the pen tool. So any doubts about the pen tool here? Okay, let's move on. So now is another great feature. Uh, you will be using it very often if you create designs or posters. So one of the features is blending modes. If you click on any layer, any text or any shape layer, what you will see here under the layer is pass through. So this is a blending mode. So normal and pass through mean the same, but if there are a lot of shapes inside a group or a union, it generally shows up as pass through, which means the individual shapes can have different blending modes. Okay, so if I click on this and I bring it up here and I offset it by clicking the left arrow and the down arrow. Now it looks like a very simple text on text. But what I want to do is I want to create a kind of effect which I can do by clicking on this layer and pass through, then clicking on any of the options there. So although this text is above, the text behind looks like it's above. So this is, you can adjust it differently to create shadows, to create a different type of text here. Okay, and you can adjust it in different ways by selecting different blending mode options. Okay, and as you can see here, all of these shapes are of the same color, but since I've adjusted the blending modes, so for example this shape, I change the blending mode to normal, and this shape changing blending mode to normal and placing them on one another, it looks like it's one shape. Okay, but there are three different shapes. So now if I click on this first shape and I change the blending mode simply, it looks like it's a different color, which is not really true. And the blending mode is dependent on the shapes or the color of the layers behind it. So if the color is this, it would look appear of this color, and if I move it onto my frame, it would appear of white color. Okay, so this is how layers interact with blending modes. And if I now click on the second rectangle and I now simply change the blending mode. Okay, so if I change the blending mode, these three are of the same color, just the blending mode is different. And if you want to adjust the opacity, here it is, and you can adjust it by clicking. So this is how the layers interact with each other by blending modes and opacity. Okay, so this is something about blending modes, and one really cool trick I would like to show you. I've also written cool trick. So these two layers, let's change the blending mode to normal. So let's move it outside. Let's move this outside. So now if you have a black and white picture and you only want to color the black parts of the picture, so what you do is you simply create a rectangle. I have created a rectangle and given it this color. You can choose any color, okay? And if you only want to color the black part of the image, You place it on top of the image, you click on the blending mode, and you click on, wait a second, screen. So what screen does is, it doesn't affect the white parts of the image, it only affects the dark parts of the image. And if the dark part is completely black, it would assume the color of the layer on top. So currently it is blue, you cannot see much of it. And now if I change the color to dark blue, all the black parts of the image have changed their color to the color of this layer. Okay, so if I want to give it an orange color, I can do it like this. So this is how recoloring of uh, photos works. So this is the screen. Okay, now if I create another rectangle with a red color, and now I only want to impact the white parts of the image. So now if I click on a different color, I click on this, I go to the blending mode, and I click on multiply. So as you can see, the black parts of the image are intact, but the white parts of the image have assumed the color of the layer on top. So this is a very neat trick that you can use to recolor your photos and also add a kind of mood or a filter to it, right? So this is about the blending modes. And now, if you only want these rectangles to show up where the image is, what you can do is you simply click on this image on the left hand side and click on this icon on the top, which says use as mask. A mask gives its boundaries to the shapes above it. Okay, so if I simply click on mask, okay, so this image has created a mask above it. So everything I create now would not exceed this shape. Wait a second. Not exceed the boundaries of the image that we had. So it is used when you only want some parts of your image to show and not the others. And if you want to demonstrate it, I select this circle, place it on top of this image, and I bring it below the image. So image is here, I bring this ellipse below this image, I click on this circle and click on use as mask. So everything above it would only be constricted to the part that the shape is. I can also adjust its size by making it bigger or smaller. Okay, so this is what masking is. So yeah, so now moving on to the last part, a repeatable pattern or pattern along the path. So you might have seen that a lot of images or posters have a have a repeated pattern. So I have created one such here. Okay. So if you want, you can place it over here. Simply adjust the blending mode. Just a second. Simply adjust the blending mode and see what it can do to this symbols or the pattern. So if you want to create it, I will show you how to create it. You simply create a rectangle or a circle, whatever pattern you want, whatever repeated pattern you want. Okay, and you give it a fill color, or you can delete the fill color and give it a stroke. Okay, so now if I place it on top here and I drag it inside. So one good tip with creating patterns would be that when you are creating patterns, you should always create a component out of it. So I would not move into the details of component. You simply select the shape and click on this icon over here. So which is create a component. So now I have created a component and whatever, and I am moving it outside so that it stays intact, and now I duplicate it to my frame. Okay. So now what I simply do is right click, and I have installed one of these plugins. You can install it by right clicking, going to manage plugin, and this window would pop up, and you can go to plugins here and browse all plugins, and you can click on pattern hero. Just a second, which plugin was that? Yeah, pattern hero plugin. So I have it installed. All you have to do to install and uninstall a plugin is click on install, and it is installed. So now every device that you log into, these plugins will be intact. Okay. So I click this element, I right click on plugins, click on pattern hero, and give how many rows and columns of shapes I want. So if I click on create pattern, so it has created a group out of all these patterns. All right. So now if I want to increase the spacing between these, so I can simply click here and click on 30 and 30 here. So this is how we create a pattern. And the reason I told you to create a component is if you want to easily edit this pattern, all you can do is go back to the component that we created, add any other thing that you want inside it, and it will be reflected inside all the instances of that component. So let me change the color of this to red, and now I have a pattern. Okay, so I can click on this pattern, copy it, move to the next frame, and click on and paste it there. So now it looks like a very ugly poster, but if I click on this and simply adjust the blending mode, I can create a very convincing pattern which can act as a backdrop. I adjust it to the full size of the frame and I bring it to the back by clicking on Control and left bracket key, and I am removing this. So this still looks really bad, but what we can do is adjust the opacity of it by coming here and clicking on 3. So it is not visible right now. Just let me just a second. I adjusted the opacity of the whole frame. If I click on this pattern on the left hand side and click 3 or whatever number it is visible at, I can create a repeated pattern here. So now if I want to change this pattern, I can simply go to this component and adjust this. So all of the instances of this pattern are adjusted. Now if I want to add text, I simply click on T and start writing my text. Okay. Now I have this text. I increase the size of this text from the right hand panel to 72 maybe, and I change its color to white. And now if I want to create more appealing graphic, I can simply add a boundary around it by creating a rectangle, moving it below by clicking on left side bracket key. Okay, and aligning this with the center of this text and simply creating a boundary around it of white color and removing the fill. So, and if I now remove this pattern from behind, this looks like uh, something that you can use as wallpaper, or you can add a quote here, or you can add pattern with flowers on the back side just by few steps, and you can simply create a wallpaper like that. Yeah, so this was it about this session. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, so if you want to create one such poster, you can do it, and just make sure that you create something like this so that you can recall what all has been taught in this session. And if you want me to help you with it, I am available on my social media. And if you, in case you create something, just send it to me personally or tag me on social media, and I'll make sure that I see it and I show it in my next session. All right. So yeah, this was it from today's session. Thank you for attending, and see you next time. I'll be ending the meeting now. Okay.
Great, thank you, Karan. It was
Okay.
really nice,
You're
I guess.
welcome.
It was really helpful for me because I'm very new to Figma, so I think it was really
Okay.
helpful
Okay.
session. Great. I
Okay.
still
Okay.
have some
Yes, I.
doubts. I'm not able to still grasp the pen tool. However, I did build the cloud, but I'm not able to make the curves. But that I will try probably. And if you can share
Yeah.
this video with me,